So check this out. I got to interview Ben Milton of Questing Beast, the YouTube channel that is pretty much the go-to OSR review channel. He's also running a really big Kickstarter for his game Knave 2nd Edition, which at the time of this recording is in its last 48 hours. In the written interview, which I've linked below and which I released to all subscribers of my newsletter, I was struck by a number of things, but here are my top 3 takeaways from the interview. 1. I think I fully understand the appeal of OSR now. I wasn't completely clueless going into the interview about the old school Renaissance and all the things that make an OSR game OSR, but I always wondered about what exactly it was that people find so appealing about it. And really, there almost couldn't have been a better person to ask than Ben Milton. He says, quote, "I've heard some OSR players call old school D&D a world-playing game since long campaigns can see whole parties die off and get replaced with the story of the world ending up as the long-term focus. The best description of an OSR campaign might be an immersive, open-ended fantasy challenge simulator, but good luck getting that to catch on." The thing I always wondered about the most was what the actual trigger for dopamine is for OSR fans when they're playing. For me, when it comes to RPGs, my greatest trigger is the feeling of accomplishing storytelling. But you see, for OSR folks, it's solving the challenge and building worlds first and foremost. And that challenge, more often than not, comes in the form of mortal threats in a dungeon or when traversing a dangerous realm, and usually in a fantasy setting. And as they overcome threats, they, especially the GM, create more of the world on the fly or in between sessions, and thus a world and a story unfold. Once you get it, you get it. 2. Knave 2e is a product of extensive thought in the OSR space. I actually have the honor of being quoted on the Knave Kickstarter page where I say that any game made by someone who has read hundreds or thousands of examples of that kind of game is probably really good, and concluded that Ben delivers the goods on this one, and I meant it. Even though I'm not a huge adherent of the OSR way of play myself, I can recognize its main elements and why it's so appealing. Ben didn't write Knave in a vacuum. He spent years absorbing what makes an OSR game good and methodically incorporated all those elements into a complete, independent framework. One example of how Knave is a brilliantly old school yet fresh remix is that he discards all those annoying saving throws from old school D&D, but keeps the 6 core stats and assigns them to 6 different character archetypes, so that as the attributes increase over time, the archetypes get better at what they do, but all without specifically naming classes or long lists of skills. But he retains the overall probabilities of success on any given check, just as in old school D&D, where it's about a 25% chance at level 1 and a 75% chance to succeed at max level. 3. The road to success on Kickstarter is clear. Look, I'm not saying for a second that the road to launching a huge Kickstarter is easy in any way, but if you've been keeping up with the interviews on my newsletter, I've now interviewed Sean McCoy of Mothership, Kelsey Dion of Arcane Library and Shadowdark, and now Ben Milton, whose Kickstarter for Knave has reached relatively epic heights. And in each interview, I made sure to ask as much as I could about how they did it. How do you make a hugely successful Kickstarter? In each case, they tell me everything they know, which is amazing because that means they're telling you everything they know. I want you to go and read this interview with Ben for yourself, but I have to mention a commonality that I noticed across all 3 interviews on how to be successful on Kickstarter: building your email list. Again and again, these creators are saying the same thing. Ditch that social media hamster wheel and put your energy into a newsletter. Twitter and Instagram and all those platforms come and go, but email addresses don't. And when you're accumulating them through your newsletter, you can keep them. Email marketing may sound super boring and antiquated to some of you, but at this point, it's undeniable. The numbers don't lie. Of course, it still takes years to build up an email list. In every case here, these creators spent years and years making other content in order to get to a big Kickstarter launch. They all had to build up a following, as well as trust and recognition in their brand before their massive crowdfund. I'm really grateful that Ben spent the time to answer all of my questions. Many of these questions I had for him about the OSR were ones I've been wanting to ask him for years, to be honest. And he really did complete my mental picture of what the OSR means to people, both what it is and what it isn't. I hope you get a chance to read this interview and to take a look at Knave 2 on Kickstarter. Even if you're not a huge proponent of OSR, Knave should prove to have a lot of value, if only for the rollable tables. Check it out for yourself. Links are below. Thanks for watching. See ya.